Hey everybody, it's Jay here. Thought I'd do some videos on the practicalities of insurance. I think a lot of times we kind of live in our own world and we don't think about what really happens. We find a hard time imagining going through inevitable things. When you think about getting life insurance, it can be sort of abstract sometimes because we're talking about having to die in order to use a product. And so it's really kind of sometimes we don't really think things through as well as we can because, let's face it, we probably don't really want to think about those things. Um, but it leads to a lot of unintended consequences. Uh, I love Reddit, and very interesting posts a lot of times about just kind of life stuff. It's always interesting people's opinions on things, or people posts that people write. One of the forums here, one of the subs rather, is an unpopular opinion subreddit, and this guy or girl post is setting up a GoFundMe hours after a loved one is killed in order to fund their funeral expenses and cope with their losses. Extremely strange and sensitive / cold. Um, and so the comments are pretty funny, actually, for a morbid uh, situation, right? The first one is kind of hard to plan a funeral without upfront money or accumulating new debt. It sucks, but funerals, wakes are usually days after the death, which means immediate money. So, I've heard all kinds of statistics, and we may in fact be going into a recession. Um, it's a little too early to be seen here. Um, but if you look, or the latest statistics, I think one of them is like the average American has less than $1,000 or doesn't have a emergency fund, something to that effect. It's very surprisingly low. And so, what would happen if you died today? Who's responsible for taking care of your service and burying you? So does that person, if it's maybe a few limited people, maybe one or two people, maybe your brother, maybe your sister, maybe your kids, what if it's your 18-year-old or 22-year-old that just had a baby, and they have very little money? Um, Something to really think about is that money's due right away, and you may be able to use a credit card, or I'm sure maybe I don't know if funeral homes do financing or not, but this is something that has to happen immediately after you pass away. And so it's something we don't really think about. And so the question is does the person that's responsible for you have that money? And uh, can they part with $10,000, $15,000? And are they going to be able to, is it really going to push them financially if they have to go into debt for that? Keep in mind is, you know, when you die, when you lose somebody, having lost several people, uh, you're in a real, fog at first, and and after the funeral and some time goes by, you're missing that person. I can't imagine having to be financially burdened by that or paying off credit for something while trying to mourn, somebody. So I think it's a responsible thing to do is get final expense insurance. It's very inexpensive, relatively speaking, because we're not talking about huge amounts here. And even if there is health problems, a lot of times we can, get you coverage. It just depends on what it is. And then, if it ends up being maybe a little bit on the high side because of, you have a health issue or your age, well, some coverage is better than none. Um, and even if you couldn't get covered at all, there's accidental death and dismemberment policies, which, if you were to pass from an accident or an injury, would cover you. Those are actually, for the amount that you get, really inexpensive. But I'm going to go ahead and look at some more posts here. Um, some of these are, we got some bitter people here. It doesn't help that the funeral industry is overflowing with low-life parasites, going into debt because a loved one died, and the industry has lobbied for a bunch of BS that adds to the cost is just cruel. The funeral industry is one of the more overall immoral and scummy industries in this country right now, and it really sucks. Zero empathy for people going through something difficult. And there's a mortician, Ask a Mortician, YouTube channel about the funeral industry and greed involved. So here's a real life example here. My entire family, and I mean everyone, had to pitch in for my grandfather's funeral back in February. Funeral expenses are no joke. So the original poster is definitely ignorant on this topic. Think about that for a minute. What if a grandfather just had bought an inexpensive funeral expense policy? One phone call. I mean, this is less than 30 minutes on the phone with an insurance agent. Of course, I can do that, but there's plenty of insurance agents out there that are able to do this kind of thing. So these people, the non-scammers at least, aren't exactly planning a trip to Disneyland here. A death in the family can fuck a struggling family shit up for years after the death. So there you go, right? Depends on the financial situation of the person. Now, if you have a bunch of money, say, put away, that's all good too. Your family could take, it could get it on credit, and then when the estate settled, could pay that off. But still, why not still have an insurance policy? Because, they tend to, probate and the will and all that stuff can take a while. These final expense insurance policies are made to pay quickly. They're not made to, it doesn't take you months to get payment for it. Depending on the carrier, it could be days. So, just looking at some more posts here. Let's see if we can find something good. Over 60 without life insurance. Why? I'm not quite sure. He died mid-90s. I guess they just never sorted it out. After that, my gran made sure to have life insurance. She passed away 6 weeks ago. My mom had enough money to pay for her funeral. I guess she learned from her mistake and didn't want to leave my mom lumbered with debt and grief. So here's somebody that had to learn the hard way. And so my job as an insurance agent is to help people. Sure, it's what I do for a living. It's what insurance, but I think insurance agents have people have sometimes a bad view of what they do. And really at the very basic level, what we're doing is we're trying to help people. We're trying to connect you with the proper insurance product to protect you. So we are to help and protect is what we're trying to do. And of course, there's some bad insurance products out there, but that's why it's important to have a good insurance agent, somebody that's looking out for your interests. Life insurance isn't for people about to die. It's for healthy people with a low chance of dying. It's used to support people who depend on income of people buying the insurance. Elderly people can make their own funeral arrangements and prepay for them, and that's true. That's another option, is prepaying. But wonder if you're, 50 years old. My dad died at 57. When he was 50, I would have never thought that he would have been dead at 57 of cancer, unfortunately. So I've gone through this. Luckily, though, my dad was very smart about it. He unfortunately learned a hard lesson from his father. A little bit of a different situation, but his father was retired military and did not have survivor benefits for his retirement from my grandmother. And so she was in rough shape because I don't think she was quite to Social Security age when he died. And so they had very little. And she was in rough shape for a while, for several years. And so my dad made sure that he got good insurance, had survivor benefits on his retirement. He worked for the government. And so he was all set up. So when my dad died, my mom, who they were very happily married for over 35 years, there was no financial issues at all. And that's good, because I can't imagine seeing what she went through and having to be financially burdened. I think would have been unimaginable. So yeah, it's a hard one. So OP seems to miss, the original poster is what that means, seems to miss the fact that the financial impact of a loved one's death is something that a family has to deal with hours after their passing. Trying to get money you don't have together to get a loved one in a funeral isn't cold at all. So it's, just kind of defending the GoFundMe thing. And I think GoFundMe is excellent. Certainly like a lot of things on the internet has really helped, connect people to help, be able to help each other. I think it's wonderful. But, from a practical standpoint, insurance is obviously better than having to ask people for money. Here's one right here. 17-year-old died, got about $15,000 from GoFundMe. So not knowing how would cover the cost of that when reality set in scared the hell out of me. That's crazy, right? And this is all ages, right? This isn't just people that are, over 50. I wouldn't call it elderly, but over 50, because typically final expense policies are normally, 50 to, 20 plus years, 25 years over 50 years old. Here's some example of some stuff, how much some of this stuff costs. As someone who had to help pay for my father's funeral, isn't really an unpopular opinion as much as it is an ignorant one. Let me break down the cost that I had to pay. Look at this: $12,000 for a grave, $3,000 for his casket, $3,000 for the funeral, $15,000 to $2,000 for miscellaneous, and total $19,000. So here's another one. I live in Central Valley, California. My dad died 2013. His brother already had the plot, so that saved us, but it was upwards of $13,000 for the rest with discounts because my family is in the funeral industry. It's insane how much it costs to cremate somebody. So, this is common. It is something that happens to all of us. So, not going to be something that you don't use. You're going to use it. Unfortunately, if you get a final expense policy and you keep it in place, you're going to end up using the policy. Final expense policies are typically what we call a whole life policy, which is a form of permanent insurance. So it stays in place for as long as you pay for it. See if we have anything else that stands out here. My father was cremated and it still cost $11,000. She ran into an issue. I also did not get his life insurance payout until almost a year after his death. That's unusual. But, yeah. Tell me you've never been poor without telling me you've never been poor. Spoiler alert. Grieving is a privilege of the middle and upper class. Clearly they're talking about the person that posted about how it's kind of tacky and gross to post on GoFundMe for funeral expenses. But grieving should not be a privilege of the middle and upper class. And honestly, for the price of some of these final expense policies, it's not a middle and upper class thing, right? So, yeah, very interesting post as normal from Reddit. So, my husband's grandmother's funeral was $11,000. So, wow. So, anyhow, I think that's about it. Funeral expenses are a lot, my dude. It's expensive as hell to die. Sad, really. Yeah. So, I've heard stories before, as this hasn't happened to me yet. But it probably will at some point. But a lot of times, most common thing with insurance when people are calling you or you're calling them is, I want to think about it. And it's because it's not something that's, they're paying for something that's down the road in their mind, right? Dying. Nobody really thinks about it, but want to think about it. So they think they have time. I want to think about it. And so that want to think about it turns into days, months, years, and then maybe they're uninsurable, or they just forget about it completely. Heard from another agent not too long ago that they had talked to somebody, and I believe the wife was in on it while they were talking about it, and it was, I want to think about it kind of thing. And so the wife had the information from this agent, because we give them our information, and the phone number and the national producer's number. And husband passed away about 6 months after this happened, and he never got the insurance. She called saying, tell me he got the insurance. And unfortunately, that agent had to tell her that she hadn't. And so, it's a sad part of the job, because could have helped. We're there to help. We're ready to do it. But and for whatever reason, I wanted to think about it. And, it just, we kind of face the consequences on it. Anyhow, so if you go down in the description, there's a link that you can click. And that link will allow you to give your information, and I will be able to, that will be forwarded to me or another agent, and we can give you, try to help you get the best price and coverage for this kind of thing, for funeral expense insurance, also known as burial expense insurance and final expense insurance, all the same thing essentially. And we can, if you provide that information in that form that link goes to, we can make an appointment and go over your options and see if we can get you set up. It's really shouldn't take any longer than half an hour, and then you never have to do it again. You don't have to worry about it. It's peace of mind. It's one last thing to worry about. Well, thanks for listening, and click subscribe to see my other videos. Thanks.